My little puppy Mia here was noticing that it takes so long to get across the river if you live in Hendersonville. Actually, what Mia noticed was that our house, that red dot at the top there, is about 2 miles from a little dot there in Mount Juliet, but it takes 45 minutes to get there. And her concern was that 45 minutes in dog years is about 5 hours. So she asked me, why has there never been a bridge built across the river right there? So I told her that what had happened was in the 1940s, 1950s, there was talk about building a bridge over there because there were no more ferries going across the river. For a long time, in the 1700s, 1800s, there were a couple ferries that went across there. There was a Saundersville ferry, there was a Walton ferry, there was a Sanders ferry. And there were ferries that helped get people back and forth. Now, that evolved into the thinking that people in Hendersonville, to get across the river, really where they wanted to get to was Old Hickory. Well, as the years went by, it wasn't so much Old Hickory become a destination as the airport, as Interstate 40, as Briley Parkway, and everything that was down Briley Parkway really were the destination for people that wanted a more efficient way to get across the river. Well, at the time, the only way in and out of Hendersonville was really Gallatin Road. There wasn't an alternative to get, and the bridge precluded any real alternatives. That the way in and out was just Gallatin Road, and if you wanted to get to Old Hickory, wanted to get across the river, there were very few options that didn't take an awful lot of time. Well, in 1960, there was talk about building a bridge over Old Hickory Dam, and the idea was that it would be a very simple bridge, sort of this blue line right here that you see from the west side of Hendersonville, going over the dam and then connecting to Old Hickory Boulevard. That never happened, and since that never happened, people started thinking that, since that never happened and wasn't happening, people started thinking that maybe the greater need is to get over to Briley Parkway, not just get over the dam to Old Hickory Boulevard. At the same time, folks in Hendersonville and folks in the state realized how awful the traffic was in Hendersonville and started talking about an alternative to Gallatin Road. And that alternative was a bypass. The idea of the bypass was just, as I said, an alternative to Gallatin Road. It wasn't a more efficient way to get from Hendersonville to Nashville. It was just to get traffic around Hendersonville, so from the east part of Hendersonville to the west part of Hendersonville. Eventually, though, people started talking about, well, what is this going to connect to? Is this going to connect across the river? Is this going to connect to I-65? Well, as that idea was emerging, the Tennessee Tollway Authority, which was actually only in existence for a couple of years, they did a small study and looked at connecting the eventual western end of the bypass to Briley Parkway. And the route that they looked at was this red line right here that really goes from where the bypass now is finished. It goes over the river right there and connects at Briley Parkway. They looked at that, and this is 1976, and said that it really isn't something that's feasible. And the reason they said that is because they looked at a 6.4 mile road with one bridge over the river, sort of an indirect route, and charging cars 25 cents to go over that bridge. They didn't feel that it would be used enough to pay back the cost of it, and they pretty much let the idea die, and the Tollway Authority didn't pursue it anymore. Well, meantime, the state and local leaders are still planning the Hendersonville bypass. They're still planning an alternative to Gallatin Road, and they still weren't sure what it was actually going to connect to. Would it just be a bypass and spit traffic back out on Gallatin Road and have a bottleneck going down to 2 Mile Parkway by Rivergate to get back on I-65? So then there were some local folks that started to look at, well, instead of that one option there and that longer route, what if we did something shorter? And what they meant by that was, instead of that red line right there, what if we did something more direct, that black line? See, there's Vietnam Veterans Boulevard, which eventually connects to I-65 and later did. But instead of connecting to I-65, what if we came out right here, went over the river, over the river, over the river, and then connected to Briley Parkway? What they were curious about was, if it's going to be more direct, could it possibly cost less money? The problem with that was, as I mentioned, it's going to cross the river 3 times. A year after the Tollway Authority put away the idea, Charles Roten resurrected it and got together a lot of influential people to talk about it. Charles Roten was a developer in Hendersonville, Goodlettsville, and Madison. He was the Chamber of Commerce president for Hendersonville, and he was very well respected in Davidson County as well. There were certainly some council members in Nashville that were concerned about these routes because they would interrupt lives. Some houses were going to have to be destroyed, and some neighborhoods were certainly going to be impacted. The meeting that Charles put together had about 30 local leaders and several staff members from the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And the staff members told these folks that really what you're talking about are 2 options. There's the 1 bridge option and the 3 bridge option. And we can give you a little bit of information about those 2. The single bridge option, option A, that goes through areas that are more densely developed. It was longer, and it would interrupt 101 families, and it could take 20 years to complete. Option B, which is actually the shorter one, it was a 3 bridge option, and it would cost $13.4 million to complete, but it would only interrupt 26 homes. Well, option B is what got the support of the Hendersonville Chamber of Commerce, the Madison Chamber of Commerce, and the Tennessee General Assembly. This is 1977. And they felt that option B was the better route of the 2 possibilities. By this time, Vietnam Veterans Boulevard is progressing, and they really need, TDOT really is trying to come up with an answer of where does the bypass end? Instead of just going around Hendersonville, what is it going to connect to? Is it going to connect to I-65, or are we going to go over the river and connect to Broadway Parkway? Like I said, the 2 chambers of commerce and the Tennessee General Assembly felt like the best situation would be to connect Vietnam Veterans Boulevard to Broadway Parkway with the 3 bridge option. There's also some thinking that go ahead and do both. Connect Vietnam Veterans Boulevard with I-65 and do the 3 bridge option. The problem that this hit was Governor Lamar Alexander. He felt like the money could be better spent in other areas, and that his transportation budget shouldn't focus on this 3 bridge option or the 1 bridge option to connect Hendersonville with people over the river. That he was satisfied with Vietnam Veterans Boulevard bypass, and he was satisfied with connected I-65, but he didn't feel like it should be a priority right now. What that said to Charles Roten and everybody in Hendersonville was that the idea of a bridge over the river had been 2 centuries in the making, 2 centuries of need, but it wasn't a priority now, and when it became a priority, it was going to take 20 years to build. Well, here we are in 2014, and we still don't have that. If it takes 20 years to build, my only thought about that is by the time we get a better route to the airport, we'll probably all have our own airplanes.